The Limping Lady by Quinn Harvey, Ellery Merriam, and Charlotte Stewart.
World War II, one of the most tragic events in world history. It killed millions of innocent people for the gain of one man, Adolf Hitler. Many followed in his footsteps of destruction, but there were those who fought back. Most people were recognized for their bravery fought on the battlefield, but there are a few underspoken heroes who helped behind the scenes. Some knew her as the most dangerous of Allied spies. Some knew her as a brave civilian. Some knew her only as the Limping Lady. This woman is Virginia Hall, the only World War II woman spy to receive the Distinguished Service Cross from the President of the United States.
Virginia Hall was born on April 6, 1906, according to her French documentations. Her well-to-do family lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and encouraged Virginia to follow her dreams. Hall started school at Radcliffe, Harvard School for Women, and Barnard, another all-women's school. But while destroying common gender rules at the time, Hall finished her studies overseas.
During her time in Europe, Hall became fluent in French, Italian, German, and a little bit of Russian.
Virginia worked in a few American embassies, but it had always been her dream to work in the U.S. Foreign Services. While working in Turkey, Hall was invited to go on a hunting trip with her friends. Her gun randomly shot through her left foot, and her friends couldn't get her to the hospital soon enough, so her left leg below the knee had to get amputated. The 27-year-old did not want the amputation to get in the way, so she got a wooden leg she named Cuthbert. Hall couldn't run quite as fast and had to walk with a limp, but otherwise she was perfectly fine. Only 6 out of the 1,500 people in the foreign services were women at the time, and Hall wanted to make them that 7, but was rudely turned down when she was told only able-bodied people were allowed to join. Sad and discouraged, Hall moved to Paris, France to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. She found it when Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939.
Soon after France declared war on Germany on September 3rd, Virginia Hall decided to enlist in the French Ambulance Corps. During the weaker part of the war, which lasted from September 1939 to May 1940, when the battles were small and not well thought out, Hall was learning first aid and getting her work as an ambulance driver. The job was not an easy one. She had to evacuate casualties and drive with a wooden leg.
However, things went south fast when on May 10, 1940, the Germans used their full military power on France. From then until the fall of Paris on June 14th, Virginia worked almost every day evacuating the wounded. But after that, it was clear that her days of driving ambulances were over.
In the early summer of 1940, she traveled to London where she debriefed at the U.S. Embassy before being offered a code clerk job in the U.S. Defense Attaché Office. She took the job, but Virginia Hall was not made for a desk job. Looking for something to do and a way to help the Allies, Hall decided to join the British Special Operations Executive, or the SOE.
Hall impressed her supervisors with her many skills ranging from her extensive knowledge of different languages to her smart wit and quick thinking, and officially became an SOE agent in April of 1941.
Around this time, the Germans executed Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941, and Virginia Hall sent important radio messages back to Britain concerning the invasion. She regularly sent radio messages about German activities back to London, organized acts of sabotage against the Germans, and helped rescue political prisoners, prisoners of war, and downed Allied airmen.
The Gestapo called her the most dangerous of all Allied spies, and because of her astounding abilities, all of German intelligence knew her only as the Limping Lady. She stood out amongst the other agents at the time. Not many of them were being hunted personally by the Gestapo chief. Hall had to flee the country southward on a grueling 50-mile journey through the Pyrenees Mountains to Spain in November of 1942, when the Gestapo put up a poster for the Limping Lady. They had no pictures of her, so the Germans had to draw her this wanted poster. Her guides displayed the average sexism of the time while refusing to take her, a woman, on the trail through the mountains, but Hall would not take no for an answer. Her prosthetic was painful in the bitter November weather, and when she said that Cuthbert was giving her trouble, her co-workers at the SOE headquarters responded with, "If Cuthbert is giving you difficulty, we will have him eliminated." What her guides did not realize is that Cuthbert was the nickname for her prosthetic leg.
The SOE would not send her back to France after the many posters put out for the Limping Lady. So, in a need to further display her talents, Hall signed up for the U.S. Office Strategic Service. It was mid-1943, and by this time Japan had already bombed Pearl Harbor, so the U.S. was caught deep in the tragic events of World War II.
Hall had to be retrained by the OSS, but she became an official agent in the beginning of 1944. The OSS was impressed by her fast learning and let Hall go back to France in mid-1944, despite the fact that the Gestapo was still on the hunt for her. During this time, Hall organized 27 parachute landings for the French resistance, sent 37 intelligence reports, helped train 1,500 resistant fighters, oversaw countless attacks, killing 170 soldiers and capturing 800, and sabotaging German reinforcements.
Her work in the field benefited the OSS and the Allies greatly. This was confirmed by a report to the president saying, despite the fact that she was well known to the Gestapo, Miss Hall voluntarily returned to France in March 1944 to assist in sabotage operations against the Germans. Her work was so well known that the President of the United States recognized her personally. She also terrified Klaus Barbie, known as the Butcher of Lyon. He said, "We must find her and destroy her."
Hall stood out against the many spies who served the OSS during World War II. She was the one who created the intricate spy network that worked to arm French soldiers behind enemy lines. She would dress up as a dairy farmer and look for good areas to drop supplies while herding cows. She would tap out Morse code messages to radio officials in London. She helped change the lives of prisoners and enemies for better or worse, all while having Cuthbert, her prosthetic leg.
The Germans called her Artemis, and the Gestapo dubbed her one of the most dangerous of all Allied spies. She was also known as the Limping Lady, so Virginia had to work hard to try to walk without a limp to avoid capture. After the war, in 1945, she was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the only woman in World War II to do so. In 1946, Virginia Hall faced one last tragedy when she tried to join the U.S. Foreign Service one more time, but was sadly turned down once again, this time because of budgetary cutbacks. Because of this, Hall joined the Central Intelligence Group that was recently created in 1947. It would one day go on to become the Central Intelligence Agency. Hall spent a large portion of 1947 and 1948 working in the field in Europe. Virginia worked for free for the CIA's National Committee in New York City after her return to the U.S. Hall married her longtime love, Paul Guelu, in 1950. Although Virginia wanted to stay out in the field, the CIA had her work in the Office of Policy Coordination as an analyst. In 1956, she paved the way for other women spies by becoming the first woman to be a member of the CIA's career staff. After working a variety of jobs at the agency, 10 years later she reached the mandatory retirement age of 60 and reluctantly left. Hall spent the rest of her life living peacefully on her farm in Darnestown, Maryland, where she enjoyed reading, birdwatching, gardening, weaving, and her pet poodles. On July 12, 1982, the legend Virginia Hall died in Rockville, Maryland, at the age of 76, but her story lived on long after that.
The CIA named a training facility in her name, and from a phone interview we were not able to record with Sarah Licherman, who has been working at the CIA for 8 years in the Office of Public Affairs, shows us that Hall's story is not forgotten. She said that Virginia Hall was a very humble person, which is a part of why she is so unknown. However, at the CIA they have a painting of her, along with a display. Sarah also told us that Virginia Hall helped defeat sexism in the CIA because now, not only are women workers, but they are leaders as well. In fact, 3 out of the 5 CIA directors are women. This is another triumph for women worldwide because they know that they too can go on to great things like Virginia Hall. World War II was a tragic event, killing over 56 million, but there were glimpses of triumph that shone through the darkness. Some people were warriors who helped the Allies win the war, like one of the most dangerous Allied spies, also known as Virginia Hall. She gave London intelligence and helped the French resistance, all while having a wooden leg and being hunted by the Gestapo. Her efforts made her the first woman to receive the Distinguished Service Cross for her extraordinary heroism.
Her legacy paved the way for future generations of spies to follow. Virginia Hall, the notorious spy who destroyed gender roles while helping to end a 5-year-long war, doing it all while having a wooden leg.